So here student, we will discuss about the properties of indifference curve. So there are four properties of indifference curves. First property is indifference curve slopes downward. Indifference curve slopes downward. Next is indifference curve is convex to the origin. Third is higher indifference curve. Higher indifference curve represents higher level of satisfaction. Fourth, indifference curve never intersect each other. Indifference curve never intersect or touch each other. Okay, here are the four properties of indifference curves. First property, one by one we will discuss. First property is IC, that means indifference curve slopes downward. That means indifference curve slopes downward. Okay, so here I am taking one indifference curve. This is an indifference curve. We have already seen that indifference curve is downward sloping. Suppose always good y we measure vertical axis and good x is horizontal axis. Okay, so the first property is indifference curve is downward sloping. So why indifference curve is downward sloping? This is the question. The indifference curve will downward sloping because of only one reason, due to marginal rate of substitutions. Due to marginal rate of substitution. Marginal rate of substitution. What is this? This is change in y by change in x. Change means del y by del x. So what is del y by del x? Suppose I am taking a point here on the indifference curve. I am taking a point A. Okay, so in this point A indicates that we consume this amount of y and we consume this amount of x. Okay, that means suppose this is the point 10. Suppose it is 10 and it is 1. Okay, now if we sacrifice, suppose if we want to sacrifice some amount of y, suppose I comes to point B, this point. Okay, if it comes to point B, then we have to sacrifice some amount of x and we will gain some amount of, we have to sacrifice some amount of y and we will gain some amount of x. In this picture it is clear that we getting some more amount of x. Okay, and we getting some less amount of y, getting some less amount of y. Similarly, again if we come to point C, then again we have to sacrifice some amount of y and we will gain some amount of x. Okay, again if we come to point D, sacrifice some amount of y and will gain some more amount of x. Again if we come to here, suppose this point is H, then we have to sacrifice some more amount of y and will gain much amount of x. Okay, so this curve these all these points shows that if we sacrifice one amount of y, then we will get one more amount of x. Okay, similarly if we go to upward, then what we will see, we will get more amount of y, less amount of x. If we shift from h to d, we will take more amount of y and sacrifice some amount of x. If we comes to c from d, then we will get more amount of y and less amount of x. We will get this amount of x and this amount of y. Okay, so indifference curve is downward sloping. Why this indifference curve downward sloping? Because this downward sloping shows that if we sacrifice some amount of y, that means at least if we sacrifice 1 unit of y, then we will get one more unit of x. Similarly, if we sacrifice 1 unit of x, then we have to gain 1 unit of y. That is called change in y by change in x, and this is called marginal rate of substitution. Marginal rate of substitution means change in y by change in y by change in x. That means del y by del x. And due to this reason, indifference curve is downward sloping. Okay, next we will discuss why indifference curve is convex to the origin.